Welcome to More Than Words. This program is part of the Communications Initiative and the Communication and Behavior Change Accelerator. And this is where we showcase varied, inspiring and effective ways to address the issue of water.
Hello and welcome to All Ears on Water and Sanitation Entrepreneurship, the podcast where we share stories, insights and tips and tricks on how to grow and sustain a wash business. I'm Andy Narracott and today we're looking at grant fundraising and the challenges of doing it successfully.
The Sanitation and Water Entrepreneurship Pact, the organization who is actually behind the podcast, was created to foster ecosystem development in the water and sanitation sector. In this sector, the universe of players is very large and is very diverse. So we decided to create the podcast as a kind of meeting place for the different stakeholders, and also a place where entrepreneurs could get practical tips, information, and also where we could tell the stories of the entrepreneurs so that they can relate to each other and also connect with each other and support each other.
When we had the opportunity, but also the urgent need to raise investment, I knew very little about this world. I knew very little about this language. I didn't know where are those investors, how do I find them, how do I approach them, and what to do, of course. Yeah.
So why did you decide to transition from grants to investment? Some people might say free money. Why did you decide to go the investment route?
Yeah, really good question.
The beauty of podcasts over the written word is that you can go several layers deep into a topic that would otherwise be unsuitable for a written format. So it gives us this opportunity to bring many different voices to a topic and look at it from all different sides. WASH, after all, is not one-dimensional. So podcasting gives us this opportunity to explore the topic from several different viewpoints.
Before doing the pilot, we surveyed around 60 entrepreneurs in our network to assess do they listen to podcasts? Would podcast be an interesting tool for them? And the response was actually quite positive. The results showed that around 50% of our audience were already regular podcast listeners. And also the results showed that around 80% of even 100% among the French speakers were really interested in a WASH podcast, WASH entrepreneurship podcast. They thought that it was a niche podcast that wasn't there yet, and that they would find it a really useful tool for them.
For us, we use 3 golden rules, essentially, to assess any and all opportunities. And every single grant or investment proposal that we make to the board follows these golden rules and is assessed against them. So, and they focus on three separate areas. So one is the management. So do we believe in the management? Do the management have a track record? What's the board of directors like? Is there a board of directors? What's the governance like?
So to choose the topics, we canvassed lots of different opinions of the SWEP members on what topics they felt were most important to cover. And personally, I let my own experience of WASH, since I've been in the sector for over 20 years now, God. And founding a sanitation business in Ghana several years ago gave me a really nuanced understanding of what it's like to run a business and the challenges, of which there are many. In the end, we chose to focus on 4 main topics, which was 1, raising investments, both on the debt and grant raising side, on human resources, on working with the government, and on impact measurement as well. It's quite a blurred line, isn't it, between the private sector and the public sector, in particular with sanitation. Did you ever get any sort of questions raised about why are you doing the work of government?
Totally. I think that is something that came from the onset when we were starting the initial engagement with the government. There was a lot of resistance, trying, like the government guarding their responsibility, because they were afraid maybe we were coming to showcase them as a failure. They cannot do their job. That's why we are doing. So I think we needed to be smart in the approach and try to have a clear value proposition to them so that they could see the benefit. And for us, I think our value proposition was we are coming to help you do your job. If you partner with us, you combine your efforts, and with our efforts, it's you is going to look good.
So, yeah, we encountered challenges. I mean, who doesn't? At the beginning, it seemed it might be challenging because there's so many stakeholders in the SWEP membership. We wanted to ensure, obviously, that everyone had their say and that we mentioned some of the work of members where it made sense. But in the end, it actually wasn't a major challenge. Everyone was extremely collaborative.
Measuring the impact of the podcast is also still something we are trying to figure out. Of course, we have the download numbers, but the download numbers and they are useful, but they don't tell you anything in qualitative terms. No, did the people like the podcast? Is the format the right one? Is it useful?
The pilot series per se was not meant for scale. It's not meant for reaching huge numbers, but it was, for us, it was a way of testing and have a real product to show, to sort of test the viability of this medium. We didn't expect to have a large listenership at this stage.
But we still had much more downloads than expected, and also people listened to our podcast in 64 countries, which was kind of we were very pleased with that. It was kind of a nice number, no?
The engagement rate on social media was actually quite good. We received a lot of positive feedback about the podcast, and the pilot was actually really well shared.
We use it in training sessions with young entrepreneurs. It starts to be kind of a tool that we use in other contexts as well. So I think it was definitely worth it doing the podcast, and we really liked. We had a lot of fun working with Audio Impact Studios and with Andy, who brought in a lot of ideas and who was really helpful and was a great host. So yeah, we were looking forward to the next series.
Make sure you tune in for the next episode when we're talking about the all-important human factor side of WASH businesses, the human resources. I'm Andy Narracott. I'm all ears on water and sanitation entrepreneurship. Thank you all for listening.
আমি যখন কলবেট থেকে আসছিলাম তখন ঝড় মানে এই টিনগুলো বাতাসে উড়েই চলে যাচ্ছে। আমি তখন জোরে দৌড় দিলাম বাড়ির দিকে এসে এখান থেকে আড়ে আড়লাম, এসে দেখলাম আমার বাড়ির এই যে বারান্দা বলি এর ওপরে পানি এক হাতের মতো উঠে গেছে। এবার বাড়িওয়ালারে বললাম, তুমি এখনো বাড়ি কেন? বাড়ি চলে এখান থেকে তো থাকা নিরাপদ না, এরপর এখান থাকলে তো বিপদ হয়, মানে মারা পড়ব।
Här i Bangladesh är klimatkrisen ingen framtidsdystopi. Den är verklighet redan nu. Landet som har stått för mindre än 1/1000 av världens utsläpp historiskt riskerar nu att svämmas över av vatten från alla håll. Av smältande glaciärer i Himalaya, stigande hav och allt värre cykloner. I höstas stod 1/3 av landet under vatten efter extrema översvämningar. Och till sekelskiftet räknar experter med att havet har svalt upp till 1/5 av marken för gott om inget görs. Klimatkrisen slår också till mot Bangladesh mitt i en häpnadsväckande utvecklingsresa. Ekonomin har vuxit i rekordtempo. 25 miljoner människor har lyfts ur fattigdom på bara 15 år i Bangladesh. Och tack vare omfattande satsningar på stormskydd och varningssystem har faktiskt antalet döda i naturkatastrofer rasat ner i källaren. Men frågan är, vilka liv är det egentligen som Bangladesh invånare räddas till? Mohammed Taser Ali Sheikh överlevde när jättecyklonen Amphan slog till mot landet förra året, mitt under pandemin. Nu är han en av runt 1 miljon människor som förlorar sitt hem och sitt levebröd under katastrofen.
সকাল আরম্ভ হয়ে গেল, 8টাতে শুরু হয়ে গেছে, বেলা 8টাতে শুরু হয়ে গেছে, আর রাত 1টা-1:30টার সময় থামিস। ঝড় ঘরটা তো বেরিয়ে যায় না তো, ঘরের ভিতরে খেলা উ করে খালি শব্দ ঝড় হচ্ছে।
Och i klimatkatastrofernas spår i Bangladesh krossas inte bara bostäder och sysselsättning utan också framtidsdrömmar. Lutfor Murol berättar hur en annan cyklon tvingade honom att lämna sin familj i jakt på levebröd och fick honom också att gifta bort sin dotter då familjen inte hade råd att ha henne kvar i skolan längre eller köpa mat. Han sitter på platsen där cyklonen slog till på en blå plaststol invid en vattenpump som ger familjen saltvatten efter att havet dränkte deras hem.
এখন আমার চিন্তা ভাবনা আছে এবং থাকাই স্বাভাবিক যে আমার মেয়েরা আমি হয়তো মারা যাব, এই অবস্থায় যাওয়ার পরে তারা এই দুর্ভোগ পোয়াইতে থাকবে। ওদের যদি একটু অর্থ দিকে সাম্যবলমিত হতো, অর্থশীল হতো, তাহলে এই এলাকা ছাড়ি অন্য এলাকায় যেয়ে হয়তো বসবাসের একটা স্থান হলে তারা সেখানে বসবাস করতে হইতো শান্তিতে। অত এই ঝড় এবং এই মনে করলি এই নদী ভেঙে এসে ভরে যায়, এতে মানে খুব অশান্তি এবং খুব ভয়াবহ জায়গা এবং খুব ঝুঁকিপূর্ণ জায়গা, মানে জীবনের কোনো নিরাপত্তা নাই।
My name is Patricia Schonstein. I'm a novelist and poet, and I live in Cape Town. Thank you for inviting me to present on this prestigious platform. I will share with you extracts from my novel, The Master's Ruse. This is an apocalyptic novel set in some future speculative time in an unnamed country. A military junta is in governance. Literature and freedom of expression have been banned. The narrative voice belongs to an aging authoress. The second protagonist is her professor of literature. Although their professions have been banned and they may not write or have public opinion, they meet frequently, secretly, and discuss their various works which are still in progress. The question of a messianic energy arises because in this landscape, the ocean is biologically dead and the earth is under tremendous stress, and actually its all wilderness is on the point of collapse. So this idea of messianic energy enters their discussion, their philosophic discussion. If such an energy were possible, if messianic energy were to return to their milieu, what form would it take? And what would it redeem? Would it come to redeem mankind, humankind, or would it come to redeem the earth? They concur that no messianic energy would be bothered with humankind, which by this stage has totally blotted its copybook. Messianic energy would return to secure creation, to heal creation, to restore the garden. I will begin my reading with a description of the dead ocean. First of all, actually describing it as it was in its pristine form, and then how it is now in the present tense of the novel. The voice is that of the authoress. Once the ocean was vibrant and pulsing, reigned over by the gods of fish and manta rays, gods of porpoise and squid, gods garlanded in fronds and waving sea grasses, gods wearing brooches of anemone and coral. Once the vastness of water spiraled and plunged colourfully around the globe in hot and cold currents, forming unpolluted gyres as they met, dancing then moving on to caress the outer edges of the land in homage the way a diligent lover might do. These currents were made jubilant by great shoals amassing as dense, lithe, silver underwater clouds. Pelagic winds, perfumed by kelp and illumined by phosphorus, invigorated all who breathed of them. But now the ocean is like dark, thick, melted velvet, forlornly moving between the land masses, searching for lost meaning. The waters are funerary and despondent, weighted by mourning, burdened by a contagion of floating cadaver-grey, sun-bleached plastic. Vast lengths of fishing nets drift like hungry ghosts, seeking life themselves in vain. Black-blue rolling tides try to empty themselves of their affliction, throwing flotsam at the high water mark. Calcified carcasses, delivered with the detritus, wash up, covered in lesions, their shining and gills corroded, their radiance dull. At full moon, I would go down to the beach to offer some word of lamentation, for then the water took on a softened, though macabre beauty under the lunar witch white. Many a time I called out toward the waves, over the rippling sheet of gunmetal silk, that vast mercurial waste, to whatever life might still remain in it. I sought to summon whales, though these were long extinct. I hoped that in the water some remnant of their spirit still moved. I wanted to inform whatever was left of those leviathans, even if only their spine and baleen, that their death was not my doing, that I had had no power to halt their harpooning, that I had not been able to stop their home from becoming a cesspool, that it was not I who had poured solvents and radioactive waste into their domain. The instruments of their demise, if they escaped the whalers, had been many. Behemoth shipping vessels had collided with them. Ropes and buoys had entangled them. Plastic had suffocated them. Chemical had burnt and blinded them. But it was the loss of their song that killed them off in their entirety. Their hymns were muted by human dissonance. They could no longer hear each other in the depths. Their lexicon had once been one of cantata, of a cappella, of duet and sona hymn. These songs, cathedralic in their scope and majesty, would circle the whole globe, but they had no timber against the booming engines of container ships and oil rigs, against the frequencies emitted by submarines and underwater military installation. Their songs failed against the explosions and cacophony of dredging and deep-sea mining. Without chorus, whales had no purpose and would throw themselves upon the beaches, whole pods at a time, great carcasses sacrificed upon an altar of dirty sand. They should have been recognized as emissaries. It should have been seen that they had come to warn of the sea's doom and the earth's coming plight, but few men gave them ear. They lay until all flesh had fallen from them, until their bones crumbled. If any living thing heard me calling from the beach, there was no response, no whisper of forgiveness. The only sound was that of the waves crying against the shore as they continued to seek meaning in acts of faith. In the end, everything merely succumbed. The overheated coral reefs bleached and broke. Mangroves and river estuaries, long stripped of vegetation, drowned under polluting rising waters. Aquatic colors let go their hold of sunlight and sank to darkness. It was a closing down. It was an absolute surrendering. This next extract from the Master's Ruse deals with a nightmare that the narrator has, a kind of vision of the messianic energy which will come to save creation and come to redeem the destruction caused by humankind. Her voice now. This messianic energy had to do with neither man nor woman. It had to do with water. It had to do with flood and fury. It came as cyclone and zephyr, crashing through the glass windows of my soul, so that I was forced to my bed, overcome and overwhelmed. This messianic energy used the ocean. It made use of that mass of dead black water and all the rubbish and filth and plastic that burdened it. Cataclysmic shifting of tectonic plates created tsunamis which slammed the shorelines, tossing Dolosur aside and pouring through coastal cities and towns. They engulfed skyscrapers and highways, drowning their human prey in the very oils and solvents that had brought about oceanic demise. Buoys, Coke cans, broken dolls, condoms, polystyrene, and all manner of trash were born there on the crests of these huge tidal waves which spelt the end of power of the human species. The ocean had risen from the dead to crush us and to permit creation to begin again. It showed no mercy, not even for the frescoes or mosaic or Byzantine detail of Venetian palaces. These might have been seen as the guilt within the human heart, its angelic side, but the black water extinguished even those glimmerings, for no mercy had ever been shown to its own once pearled surfaces. From inland, the rivers collaborated, swelling with torrential rain that the storms had delivered, bursting forth and drowning everything in their path. They broke the huge dams that had harnessed their spirits and threw down tonnage upon tonnage of concrete. The fury of the water cut away at landscape, resculpting it, destroying fields and enclosures, splintering fences. And then, after they had reclaimed floodplain and wetland, the waters settled, seeming to heave a sigh as redemptive silence prevailed.